All 4 of Singapore's telco operators were attacked by UNC3886, a cyber threat group named by the government in July last year. 6 agencies mounted a cyber response in the wake of the attack, and investigations found no evidence that services were disrupted or sensitive data lost. Digital Development and Information Minister Josephine calls on all critical information infrastructure operators to keep investing in cybersecurity.
You are at the front lines of the battle against cyber threat actors. Your actions or inaction can determine whether we succeed or fail in protecting our critical infrastructure and our national security. Leaders, including at the board and management levels, must also take cybersecurity seriously and provide close oversight to their teams.
While authorities did not reveal when the attacks began, they mounted Singapore's largest coordinated cyber response in March last year. 6 agencies were activated and worked closely with the telcos to counter UNC3886, which cybersecurity experts said has been linked with China. Now, China has denied the links. Ivy Chalk takes us through how Singapore countered the threat.
Deep in service, an alarm was set off. Cyber threat group UNC3886 had sneaked in using what's called a zero-day exploit. This means targeting a hidden flaw that developers are unaware of, like a secret entrance to your home that you don't know about. When telcos discovered this breach, they immediately alerted the authorities, who sprang into action.
The first step is to do a triage as well as to assess the possible scope of the incident. So it was only after this process was completed that we realized the possible scale of incident that we had in front of us.
Flash forward to March 2025, months after the group first infiltrated the telcos. Emergency cyber response protocols were activated and CSA launched the biggest coordinated cyber response in Singapore to date, called Operation Cyber Guardian. The multi-agency effort mobilized over 100 defenders across 6 organizations from both the civil and military sectors. Working round the clock, the teams tracked the attackers' movements, and at the same time, they alerted operators of critical information infrastructures. They provide essential services that Singaporeans can't live without. In July 2025, the public was informed.
UNC3886 poses a serious threat to us and has the potential to undermine our national security. Even as we speak, UNC3886 is attacking our critical infrastructure.
To counter the attack, defenders cast a range of actions. This includes combing through networks to close access points and change credentials. As infected systems were cleaned up, they were also redesigned and hardened against future strikes. Defenders also simulated attacks and fixed gaps to ensure that measures were working properly. But UNC3886 fought back. Like a chameleon changing colors, it switched gears and used different techniques to evade detection. Defenders doubled down in response, adapting to the attackers' evolving tactics.
We first study the network of the affected CI, and that's where we develop our custom tools, scanners, as well as fine-tune our network detections so that we can hunt for signs and trails that the threat actors left behind when they compromise the network.
For containment, we raise the securities of the telco operators and close off the already known compromised segment. And we also identify previously unknown vulnerabilities and close these off as well. So for remediations, so even in the midst of taking steps to contain the breach, we actually work with other agencies to determine the impact and identify the root cause of the incidents in order to prevent reoccurrence of the incident.
With these efforts, the team managed to limit the attackers' activities.
So far, our attackers have not been able to move deeper into our telco networks. In one instance, they were able to gain access to a few critical systems, but did not get far enough to have been able to disrupt services.
Even as the attacks are contained, authorities warn that cyber threat groups remain sophisticated and persistent. Efforts to defend Singapore's cybersecurity are ongoing.
In a joint statement, all 4 telco operators note that they are facing increasingly sophisticated, advanced, and persistent threats. They say they work closely with government agencies and industry experts to improve security and resilience. They add that protecting critical infrastructure is their top priority, which is why they'll keep pace with the evolving cyber threat landscape and update measures accordingly. A spokesperson from the Energy Market Authority, another sector with critical information infrastructure, notes that it is also facing increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks.
That is why there are measures to protect our power system. Contingency plans are also in place to minimize risks and respond to major disruptions, while regular exercises are conducted to test and validate our readiness in responding to such threats. EMA will continue to work with relevant government agencies such as MINDEF and CSA, as well as industry partners to safeguard and strengthen Singapore's power system.
According to one expert, repelling cyber threats may give attackers information that could help them plan their next moves. But he also says defenders gain hard-earned experience that's not easy to come by.
We have a real-world situation that they will practice on based on the doctrine that they have. And from there, it is clear, who does what, which agency is responsible for what are the roles of the different telcos, the government, and so on. So when they are able to practice through real-world incidents, this gives them the ability to know in the future, like, okay, who needs to do what, and so on in better clarity.
And here to share more is David Koh, who is Chief Executive of the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. David, welcome to the show.
Angela, thank you for having me.
Now let's start with what makes the UNC3886 threat so different from previous threats that Singapore has dealt with before?
Well, firstly, it's an advanced persistent threat. As the name implies, they are advanced and they are persistent. And it's not the first time that Singapore has been attacked by APT threat actors. In 2014, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs IT systems were attacked. And you would recall that the SingHealth IT systems were attacked similarly in 2018. So this is not the first time, and it won't be the last time that Singapore systems have been attacked by advanced persistent threat actors. This attack, however, was potentially much more serious. And the reason is because the attackers targeted the critical systems which directly support the provision of services which are essential to Singapore and Singaporeans. And if they had been successful, then the potential damage that could have been done would have been very serious. They could have potentially disrupted telecommunications and internet services, which we all depend on. And there are also knock-on effects because other essential services, for example, banking and finance, also depend on telecommunications and internet services.
Yeah, speaking of those consequences as well, 4 telcos were affected this time around. Do you see other critical infrastructure that might be affected going forward? And what are the high-risk areas at this point?
Right. Singapore has seen the number of attacks by advanced persistent threat actors increase quite significantly. From 2021 to 2024, we've seen the number of APT attacks go up by 4 times. And globally, this trend also is on the uptrend. For example, in 2024, the US reported particular APT threat actor, Volt Typhoon, had infiltrated into their critical infrastructure. And in their case, it had targeted telecommunications, the energy sector, as well as transportation. So these are just some of the examples of the critical infrastructure that APT threat actors have been targeting.
Yeah, and taking into consideration all these risks then, what is the government doing to protect, hedge us against further threat going forward? Is it enough what we're doing at this point?
That's a great question. I think it is an ongoing cat and mouse game, as it were. At one level, we have improved the level of our cyber defenses, but the attackers are persistent and they are innovative. So we have to continue to evolve our defenses. Specifically for the telecommunications sector, the government, the Cybersecurity Agency and the Infocom Media Development Authority are working actively with the telco operators, who are all private companies. So this strong public-private partnership is an example of what needs to be done. And what we are doing is helping the telcos directly to improve their level of cyber defenses, improve the defensive layouts that they have, put in place sensors so that we can help them detect future attacks. A key point to note is that in the past, we had focused quite a lot on prevention, building the fences, as it were, to prevent the bad guys from coming in. But because the threat actors are becoming more sophisticated, in this particular UNC3886 attack, we saw them use a 0-day, which is conceptually equivalent to having a secret key, which even the defenders didn't know existed, and it allowed them to bypass the existing defenses. Because of innovations like these, prevention by itself would not be enough. So we also have to increase the vigilance internal to the systems, adopt an assumed breach stance, and check internally to see whether the attackers had infiltrated into the networks already. So this is an example of the kinds of things that we are doing.
Yeah, David, thank you so much for breaking all of that down for us. I've been chatting with David Koh, who is Chief Executive of the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore.